Overthinkers of Reddit. What unlikely scenario actually came true that you were completely prepared for because you are an overthinker? When my wife and I were getting married and looking for a place for ceremony, we have found this beautiful but quite remote garden. We were signing the contract for the event and I kept thinking that it was quite remote, so I asked, "How much time does it take for the ambulance to get here?" I became the laughingstock of both families. My, then future, mother-in-law, who was present at the meeting, literally fell down from the chair laughing. The wedding organizer remembered it for weeks, telling about it everyone we met. My dad ended every sentence with, "But maybe you need an ambulance for that." My wife was making siren noises when I was saying something we disagreed on. Every family dinner, all the aunts and uncles were checking if the ambulance was present. You name it. The entire package. Still, I couldn't get rid of this weird feeling. It would have taken over an hour for the ambulance to get to the garden. After a few weeks, I ended up paying a private ambulance to be present at the wedding. Fast forward to the ceremony. As my wife literally walks down the aisle, at the back of the garden I see two paramedics running with a stretcher. And my dad squeezing my hand whispering, "That's not of your goddamn business, let them to take care of it." What happened was that one of our older guests got a heart attack and almost died at ceremony. Was saved by the private ambulance. Ever since then, when my wife tells me that I'm overthinking, I just do the siren noise. Well. Thanks for the awards everybody, glad you liked the story. I promise you that I was tired of winning after that. They never heard the end of it, but all the laughs were in good spirit. I apologized to the guy's kids for ruining their inheritance plans, and he was saying that the service was so boring that he preferred to take his chances with the heart attack. So we had a few more laughs and trolling. Some of you are asking how much did the ambulance cost? I don't remember as it was many years ago and I may not be from your country. But does it matter? Can one really put a price on the "I told you so" you can use anytime you want with your mother-in-law? I was once driving on the highway behind a car with a couple of kayaks strapped to the roof. My anxious brain kept saying, "What if they fall off the car, Final Destination style?" I tried to convince myself that it was an irrational fear. But the anxiety got the better of me and I decided to change lanes and make some distance. About 30 seconds later, cue kayaks. They both slip off the roof and go rolling around the highway. Luckily no one was hurt, but man, that did not help my anxiety at all. To address some comments. I figured I was overthinking, since I don't know anyone else who gets nervous or avoids driving behind cars with loads. But I see now that maybe my behavior wasn't so weird. Apparently a lot of you have seen falling kayaks on the highway. I don't think this is the same exact incident as any of the ones you guys have described. From comments about how to properly tie down a kayak, I think these were not properly secured. I don't think they were tied to the bumpers. Injuring my dominant hand. As a kid I had an irrational fear of having it chopped off. I spent all of grade 6 teaching myself to write and do things with my left hand. I made a conscious effort to remain as ambidextrous as possible. As an adult I broke a few fingers on my dominant hand. But it wasn't a big issue because I could do most things equally with my left hand. Anticlimactic, but it was useful lol edit. Thanks for the rewards folks. Edit 2. Spelling. In college on occasion upperclassmen would randomly steal the underclassmen towels from the shower stalls and then lock their room doors so they had to go to the raw bar asked. I had the idea to stash a towel in the drop ceiling tiles for just that event. Maybe a week later I became the victim of a towel snatching. However, the upperclassmen were very unhappy to see me strut out with a nice clean towel from my ceiling stash. I always carried an extra juice box, snacks and an extra set of clothes during high school because I was always worried that one of the kids in my school with diabetes might get low and need some sugar for the juice box and snacks, and I might get dirty or my clothes would get ruined. The extra clothes, well, one day the kid in my class with diabetes did need the sugar. As luck would have it, a few days later a girl in my class was having a really bad wardrobe malfunction and couldn't wait for a new shirt, so my XXL t-shirt acted as both a shirt, dress for her. This blew up while I was working. Thank you everyone for the up votes. May the world ever be in your favor, all of you. Spelling, grammar. I carry scissors in my glove compartment. They came in handy when a kid tightened a skinny zip tie around my 9-year-old's finger at a park. Completely cut off the circulation. Also, the other kid's mom was a nurse, so that was helpful too. Carry scissors and a nurse at all times. Ah crap, I forgot to pack my nurse. The panic attack that the overthinking caused. Edit. I feel like a fraud. I haven't had a panic attack in like 3 years, although I've had a handful of baby panic attacks since then. At one point, 1 month I must have had 30+ panic attacks. I was constantly in a panic attack, depression cycle, and my brain worked so poorly that it felt like I lost a lot of my intelligence and almost all of my personality. But with therapy, lots of journaling, exercise and especially learning to gauge how likely something is to happen when I experience a fear, and not listening to unwarranted catastrophic thinking, I've recovered a lot and my anxiety levels are much more manageable. Thank you everyone for the awards, but I feel like all these people who still experience the panic attacks deserve them. That shit sucks, big time. I carry some of just about everything in my purse. We were at a beach, during off-season, and a kid wiped out. I had everything needed, to clean and bandage him up. I carried that stuff, renewing when it got old, for almost 20 years before actually needing it. Thanks for the awards. So maybe not quite this, but my little sister. Through a long series of events, my parents, who were not foster parents and not looking to adopt, ended up taking care of an infant, who was not at all related to us, whose mother had just died. It was only supposed to be for a few weeks until she could be moved to a more permanent placement. As soon as I found out that my parents had agreed to help watch her temporarily, I knew where this was going, and I had all the initial adoption application paperwork printed out before she ever got to our house. Needless to say, my parents were pretty surprised the day they said they were thinking of adopting her, and I handed them a folder of forms and my handwritten notes on how the process worked. For the record, she has legally been my little sister for 7 years now. Went through a stage as a teenager where I thought I was psychic. I know, stupid. A friend asked me jokingly to make a prediction. I told him to get a flashlight, because tomorrow would be dark. I grabbed one myself when I got home and put it in my purse. No idea why, just did it. The next day the eastern seaboard blackouts happened. He still asks for predictions to this day. Wear your seatbelt. I carry a fire extinguisher in my auto. I witnessed a car accident where the engine caught fire. I quickly put it out before it burned the inside of the car. Everyone survived. I am an amateur clarinetist. I've played in the local orchestra and the like. My son was in the high school band, also played clarinet. Prior to a football game, at the warm-up area, he called me as I was about to head to the game, saying that someone in his section had a problem with their instrument. So did I have a loner? Now the thing about being a clarinet player is that everyone you know calls you every time they see a cheap plastic clarinet for sale at a garage sale or the like. So over the years, especially when my son was in junior and senior high, when I saw one of these for $50 or $100 I grabbed it. Didn't happen every day, but at the peak of my collection I had a couple of beater plastic clarinets in addition to the pretty good wooden one my son played. And Lord knows I wouldn't trust anyone with my good clarinets in B-flat and A I used in the orchestra. So I grabbed both of these plastic jobs, which actually played okay, and brought them. I pulled the one I thought was the better of the two out of the car and gave it to my son's friend. Meanwhile, he says hey, another person ran into a problem, and I got the second clarinet out of the car. How many clarinets do you have? Was my son's question. It was a proud moment. Edit. Wow, thanks for all these awards and upvotes. It helps confirm I really am bananas. This was at 9 years old. We had driven home and seen the beginning wisps of smoke for the California cedar fire in 2003. Naturally, I assumed the worst and packed up all my clothes and spent about an hour making a travel cage for my guinea pigs. I tied their water bottle to the side so they could drink, packed up their food and their favorite furniture just in case. I then spent the next few hours monitoring the fire on the news and out in the distance from our window, periodically asking my parents if we needed to evacuate. At some point in the night the fire sped up like crazy and was literally on the hillside across the street. I went into my parents' room and said, "The fire is across the street, are you sure we shouldn't evacuate?" At this point we all went crazy grabbing important documents and supplies, and as we were about to lock the doors and drive I realized I forgot my guinea pigs. My parents told me it was too late and I didn't have time to grab them, but when I cried and explained I had them packed up, I was able to grab them and go. The house ended up okay thanks to a neighbor putting out embers before they took, but we were gone long enough my pigs wouldn't have made it. TLDR. Helped save my family and pets from a fire because I was an anxious child. Mace. A person I worked with was a registered sex offender and he had a thing for me. I told him multiple times that he made me feel uncomfortable and to stay away from me. For some reason I had nightmares about this dude. He was 6.5 feet tall and fucking hideous. Anyways, he said he was going to stop at a store that I stopped at all the time after work, and it was obvious he knew my direction when I left. I pull up to this store and he's already there, walks up to my car and I just roll down my window and spray this dude, and he dropped a billy club out of his sleeve. Everyone always told me to stop being paranoid and stop thinking he's going to attack me or rape me, that he's been to jail and learned his lesson. Fuck that dude. He should have never been let out of prison. For reference, I'm also a 6-foot-tall dude who is always prepared for the worst. I always keep an unopened deck of cards in my backpack. You never can tell when some hold'em may be needed to pass the time. But when I was at a business conference, the bigwig who was presenting to us was having to wing it with a few things because his luggage had been lost, and he didn't have all of his materials. He had the PowerPoint deck, but he didn't have his props. He started going into explaining how he'd be able to demonstrate this statistical principle he was describing, only he didn't have the unopened deck of cards he needed. Voila! I was able to produce a shrink-wrapped deck of cards. My boss was also in the same presentation, and he was also impressed that I just happened to have a deck of cards on me, so that's nice, too. I keep my gym bag in the car so I have a dry outfit after getting into a water balloon fight with my nephews. Also I carry Band-Aids, tissues, Benadryl and stamps, which I give out frequently. Kids skinned their knee at the zoo? Got a bee sting? Runny nose? Forget to mail the kids FOFSA or your tax return. I got you. When I was 11, I always kept approximately 12 to 15 of some combination of pens, pencils, and markers in my pant pocket. Just liked having options and never knew what I was going to need to write on. Sometimes got some side-eye from other kids though. Cut to at a weekend camp with a bunch of kids. I'm participating in a sort of scavenger hunt race thing. At one point our teams hits this task where everyone has to draw or write something, don't really remember. But there's only 2 pens, about 10 people per team, and another team just showed up. With 1 pen assigned to each team, it's going slow, until you get a pen. You get a pen. Everybody gets a pen. Our team screams through the task because we can all write simultaneously, while the other team's left plodding along with their 1 pen. We eventually win. Who's weird now? Edit. For those concerned about cheating. I believe the lack of pens was oversight but the event planners, not a deliberate means of handicapping teams. There was a staff members monitoring that particular station and they didn't intervene. Our victory was sanctioned and still stands. Edit 2. Some people have expressed concern over the possibility of my getting impaled by all these writing utensils. Rest assured that this 100% has happened to me. I have absolutely impaled legs and fingertips multiple times. It was terrible. I am basically blind without my glasses, and I've always taken a backup pair of glasses when I travel. It went untouched for years, taking up valuable space in my luggage. Lo and behold, one trip to Montreal a few years ago I just woke up one morning to find my glasses broken, no idea how it happened. And I finally got a chance to break out my backup pair. Made my kids rehearse for a fire. We had rope ladders, escape routes and a meeting spot everyone should. January 17, 18 we put it all to the test. I thank God every day that we all made it out because we were prepared. Overthinking and anxiety for the win. I work in childcare and was working at a center that was so draining. I started applying for new jobs and went on a couple interviews. One time, I had an interview with another daycare and was offered the position. I loved my coworkers and ultimately decided to turn the new position down. However, I had this gut feeling that I couldn't burn any bridges in case shit at my current job hit the fan. So when I turned down the new job, I made up an excuse saying I'd love to take the offer but couldn't because of XYZ reason but would be in the touch sometime in the future. Lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, shit hit the fan at my work. I took a month off and then emailed the job that offered me a position and started 2 weeks later. My partner tells me I overthink and overbuy groceries because I have an intense fear of not being able to provide for my daughter. When COVID hit and the shops were out of stock of everything, guess who was the one supplying food and toilet paper to said partner? COVID. I worked at a medical uniform and supply store years ago, and they were moving locations. They decided they weren't gonna sell face masks anymore, and were gonna throw boxes of them away. I asked if I could keep them, just in case. They've been moving with me for about 5 years before I actually used the masks. When I had a tumor removed a couple years ago, I kept the surgical blue vomit bag thing they gave me just in case, in my car in case anyone ever got sick while I'm driving. Last winter I was on a third date, driving on the highway back home with her, and she was feeling like she was going to throw up. Could not find the blue vomit bag. Felt dumb telling her where to look when it was in my center console all along. She ended up ralphing in a grocery bag that luckily didn't break. Overthought and forgot. Not me, but my mother. Apparently at a party where my parents and their friends were playing board games, there was a realization that an hourglass was missing from one of the games they planned on playing. My mother proceeded to reach into her purse and pull out an hourglass she just so happened to bring, on the off chance they didn't have one. However, later in the night when some drinks had been had, someone accidentally slammed a drink down, breaking my mother's hourglass. Without missing a beat, she reached into her purse and pulled out another hourglass. She knew the first one, being glass, might get broken, so she had a backup ready. I bought and learned to use a Slim Jim open-locked cars. I carry one in my car and have been able to help no less than 10 people who have locked their keys in their car. My brother was visiting me from out of town and he needs something from Target. He called me and said an elderly man had locked his keys in his car and I was able to drive over and help. Also have jumper cables that have helped start a few stranded drivers. Getting lost in a foreign country. Relying on phone GPS to navigate, data stops working. Had over-prepared and memorized the map of the downtown area ahead of time. Came for the validation, did not disappoint. Will forever bring way too much stuff everywhere just in case. Edit. Wow, thanks all. Ironic, I should have been more prepared for these accolades. The death of a family member. OCD. When overthinking turns into repeatedly mourning for family who are still alive. Because how would I feel if I never get to see them again? What would I do if my neighbor's house caught on fire? I said I'd make sure my kids were safe and panic, and then we'd run if the fire got close. My neighbor's house caught on fire and I sat outside and watched it with my kids and panicked. I've never told anyone this, but when I was in middle school and going through puberty, I used to be terrified of getting a random boner and my fly being down accidentally. Like, I would be up in front of class and then randomly get an erection and it would just pop out of my fly, in front of the whole class. Lol. It's making me laugh just typing this out. You know that episode of South Park where Jimmy keeps getting random stiffies? That was basically my life. Usually I would just tuck it in my waistband and wait for the storm to settle, but I still had the huge fear of it popping out of my fly because I forgot to zip it up. So what did I do? I started wearing my boxers backwards so that even if I forgot to zip up my fly, my schlong wouldn't be exposed. It was a pain to use the urinals, but honestly I got used to it pretty quickly. Flash forward a couple months and I was at the movies with a big gathering of people. It was basically a big group of girls and my group of guy friends. Each guy and girl paired up and made sure to sit next to each other. I was paired with the girl I had a huge crush on. We shared a popcorn and soda and it was a huge moment for me. Briefly into the movie, I got one of those damn random boners and I quickly but discreetly stood up and did the OL waistband tuck. When I sat back down, I could feel it pop out through my zipper. Thankfully, my backwards boxers kept it from saying hello to my date, but I still panicked and had to cover up in hurry. She noticed, but I think we can all agree that a 6th grade boy's erect penis hiding under a layer of underwear is better than just sprouting out bare in the middle of a crowded movie theater. Also, she never said anything to her friends about it. Shout out Stephanie for not mocking me with her friends.